Okay, so welcome back everybody to the next panel session. We will be following the same format, so I'll be coming to all of you for your questions once I've introduced our speakers and we've had a bit of a conversation. In terms of the topic of this session, I would say this is probably the issue that comes up the most when we do any events to do with digital and digital transformation or data or any issues like that. The question of AI and how AI is going to transform both the way we work and the services that we deliver. So this is all about unlocking insight, how government can make the most of analytics and AI. We've got a very large panel here, so we're going to be keeping our answers very brief so we can get through as many questions as possible. But I'm going to just kick off by introducing our great panel, and then I'll put some questions to you and throw it open to the audience. So I'm really pleased we've got Matthew Gravis, who is the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer at the Office of Management, Strategy and Solutions at the Department of State. And then we will hear from Sau Sheong, who is the Sau Sheong Chang, who is the Deputy Chief Executive at the Government Technology Agency in Singapore. So it's great that you've come all the way over from Singapore. And then we've got Amy Jones, who is the EY US Public Sector AI Market Lead. And next, Conrad Stosz, who is Director of Artificial Intelligence at the Office of the Federal CIO, Office of Management and Budget at the Executive Office of the President here in the United States. Very long titles you have in the United States, I have to say. Then we've got Laura Gilbert, who is the Chief Analyst and Director of Data Science from number 10 Downing Street back in the UK. And last but by no means least, we've got Valentina Ion, who is Public Finance Administration Global Lead at Microsoft. So I'm sure you'll agree we've got a fantastic panel. Please do take this opportunity to put all your questions to them. I'm just going to kick off with a very general kind of opening question that you can all give your initial thoughts to. And that is, as I said, AI is definitely the hot topic. It's what everybody wants to talk about. But from where you sit, either within public sector or working with the public sector, do you think we have the necessary foundations in place in terms of our systems, the way we manage data, all those kind of things, to fully maximize the potential of new technologies like AI? Matthew, I'll come to you first.
Sure, thanks for having us. It's an exciting panel. It's been a great couple of days so far. Tomorrow, I know the DX Summit continues. So excited to be here. We look at this from a couple of different ways. One is we've been doing data management and artificial intelligence for quite a while in the State Department. We're dealing with an ecosystem that is 300 plus locations, 70,000 employees across the world. That makes it more complex. And our data management activities have improved. And with the explosion of interest, I would say, in artificial intelligence, we've leveraged that to say, great, you want AI? We got to get the data good. And it goes hand in hand. And so that's been our focus, is leveraging the AI hype within the department to not only do AI, solve business problems, strengthen our diplomatic platform, but also use that interest to improve data at a lower level. I'll also say we can add value with AI to diplomacy without improving our data yet, because there's a lot of stuff we do with public data, for example, media information. Our diplomats on the ground at every location around the globe are responsible for knowing what's going on in that country at any moment in time. And a lot of what they engage with is media, is their counterparts, their partners. And so that data is already good, right? Or if it's not good, it's information that it takes a human to actually assess the quality of it. And we have those processes in place. So the opportunity to realize value is already there, and we're off and running.
Okay, fantastic. Quite an optimistic view that we've already got a lot of things in place. Sau Sheong, do you agree with that?
I do. In Singapore, though, I think we're in a pretty good position at this point in time. And that's because we started off quite early in a lot of our work. Not really to do with AI per se, but we understood that data was very important. So a few years ago, we set up a government data architecture as well as a government data office to put together a lot of these things. And that helped us a lot with AI coming in. There's a lot of need for data. We have trusted centers where we grouped various agencies' data into a single trusted source. We also have various places where we can go to help with expertise in managing the data. So I think data side of things, I wouldn't say we are perfect, but we have set up the engine in motion. We are doing a lot of cleaning of data and so on and so forth. So as I come here and listen to a lot of speakers, actually, I realize that what we do in Singapore is a little bit different, because I hear like this is for the Department of State, but GovTech actually handles for the whole of government, for the whole of Singapore government. Of course, we have a lot fewer departments in Singapore than in the US, so I guess that helps a lot. And then, of course, we started a journey on the cloud as well. We had a government on commercial cloud program where we aggregated a number of cloud providers to provide for our agencies. And today, if you are looking at doing any sort of processing, most of the time the GPUs would come from the cloud, any one of the cloud providers. And that helped a lot of the agencies who wanted to start off their AI programs to be able to have access to GPUs. So I think we are in a good spot, and it's not because we had like prescient, we know what was going to happen. I think AI caught everyone by surprise, I think, in the industry. We just so happened that we were in the position that we have placed a lot of things in motion, and I think we are trying to reap as much of that as possible.
If you get an opportunity to look up some of the things Singapore are doing, it is fantastic, some of the work that you've done, so I'd highly recommend doing that. So you've definitely put in a lot of groundwork, I think, there.
Yes, we
absolutely. But also, as you say, there are different issues of scale, I think, when you come to countries like the United States. Thanks. Amy, over to you.
We have an exceptional investment in data over the last several decades. We have collected it, we have maintained it, in some cases to a great technical debt. And we are now facing an opportunity for synthetic data to overwhelm our existing data sources. And so I'll be a little bit controversial or push the boundaries here and suggest that now is the time for us to protect that investment and ensure that not only are we thinking about the quality of the data sources that we have, but also the metadata that's associated with it and the taxonomy that are being fed into these models. We have a lot of discourse on responsible AI, trusted AI. They're at odds in the most extremes. Public sector has exceptionally significant mission sets. And so when I think about data privacy and model transparency, in the most extremes, those are at odds. And so the public discourse right now we need to have is around where do we derive the greatest confidence from our data and from our models on the outcomes of our citizens so that we can get that right. And so I think we're having all of the right conversations, and we've got the people at the table, and I'm really excited about the next couple of months.
Thanks, Amy. So really stressing this is a real pivotal moment in time in terms of how we go forward here with the data side. Thanks, Conrad.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing a lot of optimism, in part represented by the very advanced organizations in the public sector that we have represented here, but it's not a secret that a lot of organizations still face pretty foundational data challenges. And if we're not solving these problems, then we're not going to keep up with the rapid pace of technological development. We're not going to be able to adopt AI technologies. Every organization is going to be at their own stage of development. But I think what we're seeing across the board is a lot of progress. And I think the stories and the anecdotes shared showcase that. But for agencies earlier on in their path, there's a lot of progress as well. This is a priority. Folks know it's a priority. And we're making a lot of progress, not just on the data infrastructure, but also addressing some of the unique issues with AI in terms of governance. In the US government, we're now having the designation of chief AI officers to help tackle these issues head on. Additional safeguards to protect people when AI is used in important ways, and clear direction to agencies to remove barriers that are preventing the sharing of data, the enrichment of data, and other things that prevent it from being useful and usable with AI.
Thanks. We'll definitely come on, I think, to that issue of AI leadership and who are the people imposed, so that's a really key issue. Laura, your thoughts?
I think I'm quite disappointed by where we are in data at the moment. It's, I think in Britain we've still got a civil service that's predominantly run by and hiring generalists. So there is still quite a lack of real understanding of the power of data in quite a lot of areas. And I would have hoped to be further along than we are at the moment. There are some pockets of real excellence, and we've got some very good, very useful data sets. And we're starting to, I think, realize the value of sort of shared and, in some places, open data sets to really generate transformation, stimulate the economy, et cetera. But there's a long way still to go, and I think we're still, because of the lack of internal skill sets relatively, we're still very reliant on external consultancies to come and solve data problems. And then because we don't always have the right skills to procure those well, we can end up with sort of a proliferation of slightly not fit for purpose data solutions that maybe don't interoperate and aren't giving us what we actually need. However, this kind of explosion in AI has been incredibly helpful in that space because people are starting to see the value of hiring the people that really know what to do. Sometimes ministers will come in and say, well, can you put AI on this thing and make it better? And we will say, well, no, because you're still using paper forms, so we're going to have to solve that problem first. And suddenly it really puts a visual image on why the data is important. The funding that we get to kind of build AI, we can use that to fix the data underlying. And the excitement that we get in the civil service about how this can change the way people can work is bringing thousands and thousands of people into kind of upskilling exercises and into experimentation and into kind of trying to figure out how they can do things better. So whilst I'm disappointed about where we are now, I think that the side effect of this explosion of AI will get us where we are, particularly if the leaders really grip it and run with it.
Thanks, Ron. I think there's always that risk, isn't it, that people see new technology as a quick fix, and you've still got to do the hard work and the real transformation behind the scenes. And finally, Valentina, your thoughts on this?
It's interesting to see that while AI has been on the market for a long time and it requires specific skills, and I'll call out the importance of a data scientist when embarking there, there's still a lot of confusion around the different flavors of AI and the purpose on using one technique versus the other. And thinking of machine learning, what's the type of scenario where such a technology will be used. Cognitive services, enabling voice-to-text scenarios, for example, with a huge impact in an instantaneous translation and so on, with a huge impact on accessibility and inclusion, for example, in terms of government, to generative AI. So what generative AI and all the technology innovation we were honored to bring to market in the past year has done, it's democratizing access to innovation, to tech innovation, and transforming something that would be critical for the majority of the population into natural system, natural language interaction and interface. And I would ask how many of you have tested ChatGPT, for example, for the past months.
Hands up if you've used ChatGPT.
Yeah. So it's amazing when tech innovations speak for itself. But
Valentina, can I just ask to do that show of hands again, if you've used ChatGPT at work?
Yeah, that's a good call out. Still impressive to see when good technology speaks for itself, users immediately go there and test it. But I'm sure you draw some conclusions from that. You draw the conclusion on data quality and data sources are extremely important, because what you put and on what you train the technology will have an impact on the outcome. Governance of AI is extremely important. So having a policy, having the right functions, roles within the government to oversight and validate how technology is being developed and tested is extremely important. Responsible AI and explainable AI, to Emmy's point, extremely important. You don't want a black box. You want to understand what the result is, why the conclusion or that guidance was designed the way it was, and what it's influencing, and remove any biases within the data, because we tend to train on what we've done in the past, on the information we had in the past. But if we were biased in our choices and decisions, that's what the technology will do today. So I'll end up by saying data quality, extremely important, data governance, security, cybersecurity, absolutely, whenever we speak about digital currency. And Laura, to your point, skilling, it is important. We are in the world of long life learning and self-actualization. The skill that we all need to have, it's continue to learn and be flexible on adjusting on the so fast evolving society.
So thanks, Valentina. And I want to come back to the rest of the panel on that issue of skills. So do you think there's a big skills gap in terms of public servants who understand AI, even if they themselves are not specialists? Maybe as Laura was saying, we probably don't have the specialists yet that we want, but actually everybody's going to need a basic level of digital literacy and understanding how to use AI and new technologies. So do you think there's a skills gap? And how do we meet that skills gap? Do we skill up or do we bring in? What's the solution to that? Matthew, I'm going to come back to you.
Yes to all of that, both, everything, all. There are some really good programs that Conrad and others at OMB have sponsored and drove. The General Services Administration has a U.S. Digital Corps program that brings on early career cybersecurity specialists, data scientists, platform managers. And we're seeing that some of those folks are the best and brightest that we have already, and they're supposed to be early career folks, and they're leading a lot of our AI adoption. That's really, really exciting. And having those programs where the marketing is all concentrated, that you can get a ton of applications, weed through them, and then create the opportunity to be able to hire across the whole government is really exciting. We have to pair that with upskilling the current workforce. That's including our own team. I run the Center for Analytics at the State Department. We are masters at business intelligence, and we need to adapt, right? We started that journey a few years ago, doing more machine learning, getting now into generative AI, but even as we are considered the foremost experts in this area for our agency, we're adapting and training and learning. Part of that is learning on the fly, doing and learning. There are things that we are doing on a roadmap that we may not have operational in 2 years because a company will introduce a new technology that makes what we built less useful, and we'll need to be able to pivot. And we'll do that, but what I will tell you is from a knowledge standpoint, we will have built a couple of years specific to Gen AI of expertise in deploying generative AI, understanding models, model selection, and training and building a culture that can use these tools so that we can pivot as industry modernizes. We can pivot. It's a lot easier to pivot in the community than to introduce and convince people to start.
It's interesting you say the need to pivot because, again, in the UK, I'm not sure it's the same in the US, that's not necessarily something that you think the public sector is very good at, being able to pivot very quickly. But in this new world we're in, everything's moving so fast that we're all going to be having to change and pivot and learn and, yeah.
I'm proud to say that and embarrassed to say that we had our AI policy released about 2 weeks before ChatGPT came out.
Well done. You're ahead of the game.
We had a definition of generative AI, and it was like, son of a... and then we had to put out a new one, right? Like, we need to both pivot from a governance and policy standpoint and from an implementation delivery standpoint.
Fantastic. Sau Sheong, this issue of skills, do you struggle with getting the right people in as well in Singapore?
Definitely. I think a lot of people do, and the spectrum of the public service in Singapore is so wide. We have all types of people at different levels. So definitely there's a gap, and therefore the way that we try to uplift our people, there are different methods that we do it, different ways of doing it. On the very broad base, we try to uplift everyone by doing a lot of boot camps. We try to disseminate a lot of information. We run competitions. We ran a prompt engineering competition for the whole of government, and try to encourage people to understand what ChatGPT is and how to use some of these things. But at the same time, we also need to look at the higher value ones. So we need to look at how we better train our engineers to understand AI. We have software engineers, but software engineers don't necessarily understand how to use AI. And a lot of times they would just call the APIs to do it. So we need to try to pivot people again to think differently of how to use AI. And what are the different cases that we use that And of course, it's not just about AI alone. There are a lot of other support functions. We need to train our data engineers to build better pipelines, to be able to bring the data to a place where we can train our models better. We start to use a lot more GPUs and infrastructure. So how do we train our people who run data centers to now look at GPUs? Because in the past, GPUs were not the main thing that you would look at. You would look at more of the CPU kind of processing. Then how do we bring GPUs into the data centers? I think that's very important, and secure it, because security becomes important. So lots of different programs, but I think one of the more interesting ones that we're looking at is how to train our senior public leaders, public service leaders, to really understand what AI is, because there's so much hype out there, there's so much attention paid to it. Everyone wants AI, but how much do they really understand it? In fact, there are some leaders who are very, very much against AI. They think it's a hype. How do we fight against that? Because as technologists, we see this wave coming, but not everyone agrees that it's a wave coming, right? They say, oh, is it like another blockchain thing that you're trying to tell me again? So there are different ways that we need to deal with a lot of these things. We are trying our best to tackle it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm coming over to the audience in a minute, but we won't keep going on the same issue of skills, but I want to, so Sau Sheong, you mentioned their leadership, and that came up as well previously. So Amy, all the rest of the four of you who are left, either talk to me, what do you think is needed in terms of leadership on AI across the public sector? But I'm also interested, you introduced the issue of the ethics around AI, and maybe people not understanding what it's doing, how it's being used, and the potential for bias into systems. So do you also think public servants are very good at managing the risks around AI? So you can talk about leadership or managing the risks of AI. Amy, I'll come to you.
So putting aside intentional adversarial acts, the public sector is exceptionally good at self-compliance when given the right amount of information to make decisions. And that's part of what this workforce is built on, is ethics and just a self-awareness in those regards. But we're talking about two very different things. So one are kind of generalized desktop applications, where the hope is that you're gonna have co-pilots, that you're gonna have these things that are just inherently gonna make you more efficient. We have so many funded vacant roles in government, and so just making sure that people's days are a little bit more comfortable. That is a different training set, a different model, a different upskilling than fit for purpose, as Laura mentioned, models, and the people who have to build them, and then also the people who have to use them. I think the users of the fit-for-purpose models, what is a potential risk that we need to consider, is if we don't start labeling these models, or at least the data that's derived from them, do we start to lose momentum because people are so worried that every model output is generative, and therefore every model output needs to go through an exceptional level of qualification to use it, and maybe that's an extreme, but then we actually slow down because we're no longer trusting the traditional AI models that are built off of rules, that are built off of machine learning, that are very explainable. So I think it's really important to ensure that we're enabling the workforce both with tools and technology and also training so that we can differentiate between those things.
So many issues, and that's quite complex, I think, for a lot of public servants, what you're saying there, to kind of just get their heads around. So lots to do. Conrad?
Yeah, and in terms of the complexity, we, I think, have a set of paradoxes to some extent when it comes to leadership on AI in the government. Everybody seems to know that this is a priority. The president says it's a priority. The heads of agencies are saying it's a priority. But in terms of actually practically making things happen, the responsibility is very diffuse. And we have chief information officers handling some of the technological foundations, chief data officers handling some of the data foundations, but there's also privacy, the workforce. All of these things are essential building blocks for not only building and acquiring AI, but doing so responsibly and doing so in a way that protects people. But we also need somebody accountable without creating yet another silo, without creating yet another separate thing where there's going to be conflict with other folks. And we need these leaders to be both on the pro-innovation side and the risk management side simultaneously. That seems like a very difficult job. I don't envy you, Matt. So I think what we're finding is that agencies are still figuring this out. They need flexibility, that there's a lot of models that are being experimented with, and that different ones are working in different organizations. But that at the end of the day, somebody does need to be accountable, particularly when people's lives are going to be on the line, whether somebody gets access to benefits, whether somebody is getting diagnosed for disease. There are these decisions where accountability is essential, and we need to figure out how to put that into existing frameworks and existing structures in a way that still works and still allows for innovation.
Really summarise it, because AI can be used across the whole policy spectrum, particularly in health. I think there's a lot of work going on in how AI can be used. So you summarised it so well. We need to be pro-innovation, but also make sure we're managing the risks, because people's lives can be affected by this. Thanks. Laura.
I end up saying this a lot, but I think we often find ourselves in a place where we're overlooking the risk of not doing anything, the opportunity cost of not getting on with it. So, you know, the British government obviously have a big safety institute for AI, and, you know, we've hired technical experts to work on it, and it's extremely important. But I'm running a new program called AI for Public Good, where we're hiring in technical experts, data engineers, cloud engineers, AI engineers, and software engineers to try and deliver products really quickly. And that's very, very important, because we have a limited amount of money as a government. We have very, very big problems. We have a health service that needs to keep running and be able to afford to keep running. The way that certain systems works puts people at risk. They're suboptimal. Sometimes people die because of the way that things are run. So we have to do this. We have to do it well, and we have to do it quickly. And when this was announced, we saw on Twitter a lot of people coming in and saying, government can't do that. They're going to do a terrible job. It's going to be awful. They're not capable of it. It's going to be a disaster. You think, well, that's a bit depressing, you know. If other companies can do it, we can hire people and we can do it ourselves. And we have to do it ourselves, because when you're constantly relying on sort of, it's not that there's no place for external providers, there's a big place, but if you're only relying on external providers, it's very difficult to be very agile and state of the art. So I really had a look around, and I looked at some data on trust in government. In the UK, trust in government is lower than it is in marketing and advertising. And in fact, almost everything else, trust in government is very, very low. Also quite depressing. So the way that I've decided we're going to approach this is we're coding in the open. The things that we build, we have videos on, explainers on, we have live demonstrations, the tools are often live, the code is live, we invite academics to come and review it and check that we're doing the right thing. You know, if you've got ethical concerns, we'll show you what, you know, there's sensitivities, but we'll explain what the data is that go in, and the kind of testing process is open. We have just somewhat public red teaming to come and look at the things we're doing and try and break it. And I think for me, that approach to risk is the one that we're going to take, that both means that we can crowdsource a huge range of kind of experiences and skills and people to help us reduce that risk and check that we're doing the right thing. And I also really hope that where we'll end up is a public that believes that we're doing what we're saying and we're doing it well. No, we're not using AI to replace decisions about whether you get benefits. We're using AI to get your paperwork to the right place, for example. So I think, again, there's an opportunity here to involve people and hopefully increase the trust and make sure that we get everybody that knows anything about it involved in the risks. It doesn't have to go wrong, and we don't intend it to.
Thanks. So the real importance of transparency there about how we're doing things and why we're doing them. But also, I really like what you said there, we need to factor in the risk of not doing this and what's already going wrong in the system. So yeah. Valentina, final thoughts before we go to the audience.
I would make the parallel with the change management. Of course, there is risk, but there needs to be also risk mitigation patterns. Of course, you need to prepare adoption. You need to skill people. You need to understand what the day in a life for the different roles within the government, as in our organization, would look like in the context of AI. You need to create support function. You need to create oversight function. You've heard it across the government. AI policy and regulation, it's needed. So it's enforcement, so it's oversight, so it's support function. Because ultimately it gets down to common sense. When in doubt, ask for support and ask for help. But it's, and investing in skilling across the public servants, entire population is extremely important, and UK has done a massive amount of investment there. But it also goes into testing it, and in doing it so in partnership with the private sector, as we've seen it in the Singapore example. And just recently, Launchpad, it's a platform where GovTech is offering the opportunity, cross-government agency and the private sector to come and test and develop. And ultimately, I'll go back to the FedRAMP and the importance of certification, authentication of technology. And this is what we were very happy to do with our technology, answering to US government and doing so across the globe.
Thanks, Valentina. Right, I'm sure we've got lots of questions. Okay, so there is a group of questions here, and I'm sure there'll be other questions in the room, but we've got 3 hands here. So if you can go to the lady there, the back, and then I'm going to take 2 questions. So we'll take your question, and then we'll come to you, okay, after. But we'll take these 2 together first.
First of all, I'm heartwarmed that you're not jumping into AI. That's number one. The second thing is I've seen the discussion around data quality, data accuracy, all of the things you've said. One of the things I haven't seen the conversation around is how do you actually understand in the current state of operations data in motion and data in use along with data at rest in a comprehensive way that's scalable, so that you can really understand what's actually happening to your data. So if you want to move to AI without data in motion and data in use, you don't have a clean way to actually restructure into an AI application. And so I was wondering if you can talk about that a little bit. And
Great. So the question is, before you move to AI, how are you confident that you understand how the data is being used at the moment? So that's that question. Thank you. And then we've got a question here, and then you can answer one or both of these questions.
Hi. So my question is about the definition of AI as far as like government bodies are concerned. Initially, I thought in 2023 it was only going to be language models. But looking at the recent guidance coming out of OMB, et cetera, and the other agencies, it seems the definition of AI application that may be subject to regulation is much wider. So in the new paradigm, would it be retroactively defining a lot of existing systems as quote-unquote AI, or, for example, say an automated system that classifies legitimate versus fraud benefit recipients? So yeah, basically about the definition of AI in 2024.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is Matthew and Conrad, do you want to answer that second question first? Have you expanded the definition of AI in the States?
Yeah, so I don't think we've expanded the definition. We are certainly relying on definitions that are broader than generative AI. Where generative AI is important, it's something that's getting a lot of attention here, but the scope of OMB's policy and the scope of the recent executive order definitely goes beyond that and includes traditional systems, more traditional machine learning systems. And that's important because if a classifier, for instance, is being used to determine whether somebody is committing fraud or not, that decision could be really important for whether or not they have access to public services. And unfortunately, despite all of the efforts that we have for things like more explainable models or more transparent process or better understanding our data, there is still a real risk that these things fail, that they don't act the way that we want them to, that the hypothesis we have for this model that we trained, for what it's going to do, that it will accurately model the state of reality, that it won't be true. And we need to have those safeguards in place to ensure that we really do adequate testing and that we have fail-safes when these systems are being used in high-risk ways, whether or not it's a generative AI system or a traditional machine learning classifier.
Matthew, did you want to add anything to that?
I agree with everything that Conrad said.
Anybody else, any thoughts on the definition of AI, or would anybody like to answer the question about data and how you understand what's happening with data at the moment? Sau Sheong and then Matthew, I'll come to you.
I can talk about a little bit about both, actually. So definition of AI, I mean, we are a bit pragmatic on it. Everyone talks about AI right now, but generally what they refer to is basically generative AI. So when we talk about AI specifically, it's more related to that. Then we actually go into different other areas as well. Like I would have a special team that looks into computer vision, and I have another team that looks into data science, which covers all the anomaly detection, classification, and things like that. So that's a little bit more pragmatic approach to it, because whenever people talk about AI anyway, they are really more talking about the hyped up generative AI. So we don't want to confuse people. We just like, okay, yeah, you think this is AI, we'll call this AI. And everything else, we'll call it by specialized names. So that's how we look at it at this point in time. Whether it's right or wrong, it's hard to tell, right? But that's our approach. On data, actually, we do quite a lot of stuff in the past, and that's because we have a lot of messy data. And we have a lot of messy data. We have a lot of agencies who hold on to data, whether they want to or they might not even know what kind of data they have. And so we had a big program. We call it the Government Data Architecture. It's a big sounding name. We set up a specialized organization to look at this. We call it the Government Data Office. And we built up a team to clean up the data, build up a data engineering organization to help build pipelines into what we call trusted centers. Trusted centers are places where we define, or rather organizations where we define that they are the trusted centers of data, certain types of data. And we build pipelines from different agencies that will funnel into them. And whenever we want specific data, say, for example, data about an individual or citizen, then they will go to a specific agency who holds all that data. And they are the trusted center, and you don't go anywhere else to look for that data. So that's the approach in the past. But I think we are moving beyond that as well, because I think there are also certain flaws within that design. We are trying to pivot into a different approach as well. But I think right now we are trying to look at a Government Data Architecture 2.0 to see how we can do better from where we are today.
Thanks. Matthew, you wanted to come in on data.
Just briefly, I'll say, and Conrad alluded to chief information officers, chief data officers. You know, the CIO is my closest partner in the State Department. Everything we do is together when it comes to AI. When it comes to data and transit data at rest, there's a nice synergy between what the cybersecurity community is trying to do and what the AI community needs to get to. It's all about discoverability of data and knowing what is where and what actually it is, who has access to it. And that journey has been longer for us in the cyberspace than perhaps in the AI space. And so we're in a good position because we've been driving toward a zero trust architecture across the agency. That's enabling us to have a stronger foundation from a data standpoint to be AI ready.
Thanks. Anyone else like to come in on anything to do with messy data? No. We'll go to the next question then. There was a gentleman here. And do we have another question further down the room? Let's take this one first, then we'll see.
So hi, I'm Jeffrey Levy. I'm the Office Director for the Office of Platforms at the State Department. Hi, Matthew. My team both runs major websites like state.gov and supports the mission websites all over the world, and runs a huge contact relationship management system on behalf of the whole department. And still, every other day, my head explodes with some other new idea of how we could use AI. I'm wondering, my question for all of you, and I'm trying to figure out how to make, I would love to hear like one thing from each of you. What would you put on the card that you put in front of every leader in government to get them smart about AI? And I go back to something I learned in grad school in a stats course where the professor said on day one, my job is not to make you statisticians. It's to make you intelligent consumers of statistics so you don't get snowed. So what would you say that every leader in government needs to know? And by the way, I don't mean secretaries. I mean, there are leaders all up and down the command chain. What would you say is one thing that everyone needs to know about AI, both to do risk management in terms of not blow up the world, and to your point, not miss opportunities? What would be one thing you would say everyone should know about AI today?
Great question. So how do we actually get leaders engaged in AI, excited about AI, but understanding maybe the risks of AI? What's the one thing you would say? I'm going to shake up the order. Amy, I'll come to you first.
So generative AI is linguistics. It is still mathematically founded, and it is still grounded in decades of experience in mathematical kind of derivatives. And so what I would just encourage leaders to understand is what is that net new difference. It doesn't have to be such a mystical creature. We just have to continue the discourse on Why is it changing now? What is the difference between stochastic and deterministic? And how is the best use of each of those data sources going to be driven into each of the agencies? Maybe that's more than a postcard, but I just think it's really important to help continue to educate ourselves on basics. And I will say this, I love that GPT has created a discourse that we weren't having before. I mean, there's lawyers that are taking fake case law, and then we're having conversations about, well, it wasn't built as an encyclopedia, it was built for creativity. There's so many great, very large artists in the media scene, fake Drake. There's songs like, what is my copyright? I love how fast we're having these conversations and how many more people are part of it, because if it's just the technologists that are reacting to business problems, we lose so many of the processes that are actually inefficient offline. And so the more we can pull people together and have that conversation, I think the faster we're going to be able to optimize.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amy. Laura, what would you say to senior leaders?
What I try and say to them at the moment is generally that it's not magic and we've kind of got this. We've been doing AI as data scientists for as long as I've been a data scientist. We were using large language models on a specific use case, which was to try and figure out what causes adverse outcomes in mothers and babies, which is accounts for about 70% of the NHS legal bills, quite apart from harm and bad outcomes. And we did that about 3 months before ChatGPT came out. Large language models aren't even a new thing. ChatGPT is, but this is the kind of thing that is our bread and butter as data scientists. It is achievable. It's the kind of thing we can do ourselves. We don't have to run around and completely panic and start making this a new thing. There was a big discussion about, we need a government senior responsible officer for the whole of AI. And then, discussing with Tom Reed, the head of government digital services, he said it's like making a head of software. Everyone should have software. You've all got, and we've all got AI. We've all got Google Maps, and we've all got spam filters. It's not magic. We can do this. This is a professional, skill set, and we have people that can help you do it. Let's get more of those people, and let's pull together and do it really, really well. But we don't have to have a complete, reorganization of everything because of new technology at the same time.
Valentina, you're nodding at that. What would your post-it note advice be to people?
I'm thinking of a set of questions on that card. First of all, what you're trying to achieve. Will AI help you achieve it faster and better? If it's AI, what type of AI, based on the purpose you try to reach out? What are your data sources? Can you understand why the recommendation, the result of it, is as it is? And who is overseeing the entire process? These are the questions that come to mind.
Great questions. I'm gonna ask the three of you who are left the same question. What would you say? But before I do that, I just want to go to the audience because leaders might be thinking this. I'm not sure they might, but can you put your hands up if you think overall AI is going to be a force for good? And now I want to see the hands if you don't think AI. If you think AI is going to be a force for bad, put your hand up. Both. Overall, I said on balance. Okay, so we've got a very positive, so we're hoping our leaders are kind of in a positive space on this. Matthew, I'm going to start with you. What would you say to government leaders?
We have enough folks between myself and the CIO and some other folks that I have a person on my team who is the responsible AI official for the department, literally focused on ethical use of AI. I don't need other leaders asking if it's okay and all that kind of stuff. I want them thinking about the business purpose, the optimistic outlook, like we'll worry about the safeguards and that kind of stuff. So the two questions that we always talk about for the non-technical leader, one is, what does the data say? Any decision that they're getting briefed on, courses of action, what does the data say? We put that in every briefing. What does the data say? That's all we ask. We gave an easy button that we recorded the Secretary of State's voice on that says, what does the data say? And we handed them out to leaders in the State Department so that they can hit a button that says, what does the state?
So that could be it. That could be the
So
thing.
it's what does the data say, and then the other is, can AI help with that?
Okay.
Like, that's where we are culturally, you know? Can AI help with that? No, sir. No, ma'am. Can't.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, they asked. Like, that's all we need at this point. Like, we'll handle the risk side of it.
Sau Sheong, I'm particularly interested in your answer because you said some people aren't on board with AI necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things that I would like the senior leaders to know. But there's one thing in particular I found quite interesting because a lot of senior leaders, when they deal with technology, they look at it in terms of absolute. So it's like it's already fixed, right? This is the technology. But as we all know, actually the technology is still moving. And in fact, it's not even the technology that's moving. It's the adoption of technology is still moving, right? So you open up the news every day, there's some big news splash all over the place, right? On how some new use of AI has come about, some new technology in AI has come about. So those things are coming out all the time. But somehow, a lot of the senior leaders that I deal with think that it is, this is it, right? The marker is here. And then how do we deal with it as if the marker is here? But by the time we talk about it, actually the marker has moved, right? So it's very difficult to talk about something that's moving all the time. So if there's one thing I would like senior leaders to understand is that actually it's a moving target. And please, we are all still trying to understand what it is and how to actually adopt it. And I'm looking for, not from a data science or AI person perspective, right? I'm looking at from an engineering perspective as we try to build out software, we try to build infrastructure, as we try to adopt technology. If the target is moving, then we actually need to understand it better, look at it, and see how best to use it. So if you ask me how to use it right now, then I can only tell you what is happening right now. So that would be my general question, general answer.
Thanks, Sau Sheong. And Conrad, we are 30 seconds over time, so you've got minus 30 seconds
Great.
to give your answer.
I'll be brief then. Probably first thing I would say is don't trust and verify, in that there's just so much hype right now, and that hype is only made worse by the fact that there is real significant progress and real unbelievable capabilities that are coming out there, and we just need to be in a position where the details have to make sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for folks to know.
Thank you so much. So overall, a very optimistic, I think, sense with some kind of safeguards in place. But before I say thank you to our panel and before we go to lunch break, two announcements. So one is over lunch break. So there is lunch available. Do grab your lunch, I think. And then there is a session going on in the other room, so in the atrium hall, all about introduction to digital public infrastructure. And that starts, I think, at kind of 10 past, 1:15 if you want to join that session. But hot off the press, there is going to be a big group photograph straight after this. If you want to be part of that group photograph, and we'd love as many federal staff as possible and public servants in that photograph, it's going to be on the big steps outside. So you can go straight there and then go to lunch after this. But please join me. That was a fantastic session. I'm sure our speakers will be around if you've got questions to all of them. But thank you so much to all of you for that.